In the vast expanse of the universe, where stars twinkled like diamonds scattered across an endless velvet canvas, there existed a planet unlike any other. Xylophia 7, with its swirling purple skies and crystalline forests that hummed softly in the eternal twilight, was home to a civilization far advanced yet deeply mysterious to outsiders. Among its inhabitants lived Princess Leora, a being whose presence illuminated every corner of the royal palace despite her blindness. Born into the ruling family of this technologically superior world, Leora possessed abilities beyond what most could comprehend. Her blindness wasn't a simple absence of sight, but rather a complex condition that rendered traditional visual perception impossible. Yet, through centuries of evolutionary adaptation, her species had developed alternate sensory capabilities. She could sense the emotional resonance of those around her, feeling their joy or sorrow as tangible waves washing over her consciousness. The air itself seemed to vibrate differently in her presence, carrying whispers of those who approached. Her disability extended beyond her lack of conventional vision. A rare genetic condition affected her mobility, requiring her to use a sophisticated hoverchair that glided silently across the polished obsidian floors of the palace. Despite these challenges, or perhaps because of them, Leora radiated an inner strength that few could match. Her laughter echoed through the grand halls, mingling with the soft chimes of the crystal gardens outside, creating a symphony that spoke of resilience and hope. The royal family had spared no expense in ensuring their daughter's comfort and dignity. Advanced medical treatments from across the galaxy had been attempted, but none could restore what nature had withheld. Instead, they focused on enhancing her existing abilities, allowing her to navigate her world through touch, sound, and the unique empathic connection she shared with all living things. This connection manifested in remarkable ways. Plants would bend toward her as she passed, and animals from distant star systems would seek her company, drawn by an instinctive understanding that transcended species barriers. Yet for all her extraordinary qualities, Princess Leora remained an enigma to many. To some, her disabilities made her appear fragile, though anyone who spent time in her presence quickly realized how mistaken that assumption was. Others saw only her limitations, failing to recognize the depth of wisdom and compassion that flourished within her. Her attendants often marveled at how she could detect subtle shifts in atmosphere long before they became apparent through conventional means, warning of approaching storms or impending diplomatic tensions. In the heart of the palace, surrounded by technological marvels and ancient traditions, Princess Leora lived her life with grace and purpose. Her chambers were filled with tactile art pieces from across the galaxy, each telling stories through texture and temperature rather than visual imagery. She moved through her days with a quiet confidence that belied the challenges she faced, her presence commanding respect and admiration from those who truly understood her worth. As Princess Leora approached the age when royal unions were traditionally arranged, her parents began diplomatic negotiations with various noble families across the galaxy. The prospect of uniting their advanced civilization with others through marriage held significant political weight, promising alliances that could span star systems. However, the responses they received during these negotiations revealed a harsh reality about interstellar society's prejudices. The first rejection came from the proud warrior clans of Zorath Prime. Their ambassador, while maintaining polite formalities, expressed concerns about the practical implications of a union with someone who couldn't physically participate in traditional combat rituals, a crucial aspect of their culture's marital customs. The message was delivered with careful diplomacy, but the underlying meaning was clear. Princess Leora's physical limitations made her unsuitable in their eyes. Next came the merchant guilds of Cygnus Delta, who valued efficiency above all else. Their representatives calculated the potential costs of adapting their business practices and infrastructure to accommodate someone with Leora's needs. Their rejection letter spoke of logistical challenges and resource allocation, reducing her worth to a series of numbers and projections. The cold calculation behind their decision stung particularly deeply, as it reduced her entire existence to mere economic inconvenience. Perhaps most painful were the rejections from within their own diplomatic circles. Neighboring star systems, who had long enjoyed cultural exchanges and trade agreements with Xylophia 7, suddenly found reasons to decline the proposed alliance. Some cited ancient prophecies that spoke against unions involving those with physical differences. Others worried about how such a marriage might affect their standing among more traditional societies. Each refusal arrived wrapped in layers of protocol and carefully chosen words, but the message remained consistent. Princess Leora's disabilities made her undesirable as a royal consort. The princess herself never witnessed these negotiations directly, but she felt their impact keenly. Through her empathic senses, she could detect the shift in the emotional currents surrounding her family. The staff who attended her seemed to walk more softly, speak more cautiously. Even the usual vibrancy of the palace seemed dimmed, as if the very walls absorbed the disappointment that permeated the air. Yet through it all, Leora maintained her composure, drawing strength from the deep connections she shared with the natural world around her. Her parents, determined to protect their daughter from the full weight of these rejections, tried to shield her from the details. But Leora's heightened sensitivity made such protection impossible. She could feel the tension in her mother's touch when they shared their daily walks through the crystal gardens. She sensed the frustration building in her father's voice during council meetings, even when he thought she couldn't hear. Each rejection added another layer to the invisible barrier between her and the rest of the galaxy, reinforcing the isolation that came with both her royal status and her disabilities. Despite these setbacks, or perhaps because of them, something remarkable began to emerge within the princess. Rather than retreating into bitterness or despair, she channeled her experiences into a deeper understanding of compassion and resilience. The rejections taught her to value genuine connections over superficial alliances, to recognize true worth beyond physical appearances or abilities. As she navigated the delicate web of emotions surrounding her situation, Princess Leora discovered reserves of strength and wisdom that even surprised herself. On a routine supply mission to Earth, Captain Marcus Hale found himself drawn to the peculiar case of Princess Leora. Unlike other diplomats who skimmed through reports with clinical detachment, Marcus took the time to understand the full context of the situation. As a former medic-turned-diplomat, he had encountered countless individuals facing physical challenges, and something about the princess's story resonated deeply with him. His own experience caring for wounded soldiers during Earth's last major conflict had taught him to look beyond surface-level limitations and see the person beneath. When he first requested an audience with Princess Leora, his superiors dismissed the idea as diplomatically imprudent. "She's damaged goods," one advisor had bluntly stated during a strategy meeting. "No one wants to be associated with failure." But Marcus persisted, arguing that sometimes the most meaningful connections came from embracing imperfection rather than avoiding it. His persistence paid off when he was granted permission to visit Xylophia 7 under the guise of standard diplomatic relations. The moment Marcus stepped into the grand reception hall of the Xylophian palace, he felt a shift in the atmosphere. While other visitors had approached the princess with either pity or professional detachment, Marcus carried himself with a genuine curiosity that immediately set him apart. He didn't treat her disabilities as obstacles to overcome, but rather as integral parts of who she was. During their initial meeting, instead of focusing on formal protocols, he spoke openly about his own experiences with loss and healing, creating a bridge of shared understanding between them. What struck Marcus most profoundly was how Princess Leora's perceived limitations actually enhanced her ability to connect with others. Where others saw weakness, he recognized strength. Her empathic abilities allowed her to perceive truths that escaped those relying solely on conventional senses. During their conversations, she demonstrated an uncanny ability to read emotional undertones in his words, responding not just to what he said but to what he meant. This depth of understanding created a foundation of trust between them that neither had experienced before. Their interactions evolved naturally from formal diplomatic discussions to genuine personal exchanges. Marcus found himself volunteering for additional missions to Xylophia 7, each visit deepening his appreciation for the princess's unique perspective on life and leadership. He began learning about Xylophian culture not through official briefings but through direct experience, guided by Leora's insights into her world. In return, he shared stories of Earth's diverse cultures and histories, painting vivid pictures with words that helped her experience aspects of human civilization she could never have imagined. The bond between them grew stronger with each encounter, built on mutual respect and understanding. Marcus never treated Leora as a charity case or a political opportunity. Instead, he engaged with her as an equal, valuing her contributions to their discussions and respecting her opinions. When they walked together through the crystal gardens, he described the play of light through the translucent structures in detail, knowing she would interpret these descriptions through her own rich sensory experience. These moments created a shared language between them, one that transcended conventional communication barriers. Other diplomats noticed the change in Marcus's demeanor during these visits. Gone was the hardened pragmatist who had once approached every negotiation as a tactical exercise. In his place stood a man who seemed genuinely invested in building bridges between worlds, not just through treaties and trade agreements, but through personal connections that could withstand the test of time. His colleagues joked that he had gone native, but Marcus knew better. He had simply learned to see value where others saw only limitation, and in doing so, had discovered a depth of experience that enriched his own life immeasurably. As their relationship deepened, Marcus began to challenge his own assumptions about disability and capability. Watching Leora navigate her world with grace and purpose forced him to reconsider what truly mattered in leadership and partnership. He realized that many of the qualities he admired most in people, resilience, empathy, adaptability, were precisely those that Leora embodied so completely. What started as professional curiosity had blossomed into something far more profound, something that defied easy categorization but felt undeniably right. The turning point came during a diplomatic banquet held in honor of visiting dignitaries from several star systems. Marcus stood at the edge of the grand hall, observing the intricate dance of politics and protocol unfolding before him. Princess Leora sat at the center of the gathering, her presence commanding attention despite her physical limitations. As various ambassadors approached her, Marcus noted the subtle changes in their body language. The way some leaned back slightly, others fidgeted with their formal attire, and many avoided direct interaction altogether. He watched as a prominent trade minister from the Andromeda Consortium approached the princess with practiced formality, his smile perfectly calibrated for maximum diplomatic effect. The minister's words were courteous enough, but Marcus could see how his eyes darted away from Leora's face, focusing instead on her hoverchair or the attendant standing nearby. The minister's assistant, hovering just behind him, made a barely perceptible gesture toward his throat, a universal signal for "wrap this up quickly." It was in these small, telling moments that Marcus fully grasped the depth of prejudice Leora faced daily. But what truly solidified his resolve was witnessing how Leora handled these interactions. Rather than withdrawing or becoming defensive, she responded with dignity and insight that left many diplomats visibly unsettled. When the minister from Andromeda mentioned a new trade route initiative, Leora asked penetrating questions that revealed flaws in their proposal, issues that even their own analysts had missed. Her empathic abilities allowed her to detect inconsistencies between the minister's words and his true intentions, something Marcus had seen firsthand during their private conversations. Later that evening, as Marcus accompanied Leora through the palace gardens, he found himself opening up about his growing feelings. "Do you know what I see when I watch you handle those diplomats?" he asked, his voice carrying the sincerity of someone who had finally found clarity. "I see someone who understands power dynamics better than most because she has to. Someone who knows exactly how far she can push without crossing lines, how to make people uncomfortable enough to reveal their true colors without alienating them completely." Leora paused her hoverchair, turning toward where his voice originated. "And what does that tell you about me?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral but with an underlying current of vulnerability that Marcus had come to recognize. "It tells me that you're stronger than anyone gives you credit for," Marcus replied, stepping closer. "That your supposed limitations are actually your greatest assets. That you've developed skills most leaders would kill for, the ability to read between the lines, to understand motivations without being distracted by appearances." He hesitated, then added, "And it tells me that I'm tired of watching others miss what's right in front of them." The garden around them seemed to hold its breath. Small bioluminescent flowers pulsed gently in the twilight, casting shifting patterns of light across Leora's face. Marcus realized he was trembling slightly, though whether from fear or excitement he couldn't say. For months, he had been wrestling with his growing affection, torn between professional duty and personal conviction. Now, standing here under the alien sky, he understood that this wasn't just about romantic feelings. It was about taking a stand against everything he had witnessed in that banquet hall. "I want to propose something," he continued, his voice steady now. "Not because I think it will solve all your diplomatic problems, or because I believe it's politically advantageous, but because I've seen who you really are, beyond the titles and the perceptions. Because I believe that together, we could create something that challenges people's assumptions about what's possible." Princess Leora's response was measured, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had learned caution through hard experience. "You understand what you're suggesting? The repercussions? My own people might see it as a step down, an admission of weakness. Your colleagues will call it career suicide." "I know," Marcus admitted, reaching out to touch the armrest of her hoverchair. "But isn't that exactly why it matters? If two people can look past all the artificial barriers, species, ability, expectation, and find genuine connection, doesn't that say something powerful about what we should be striving for as civilizations? The silence that followed was charged with possibility. Around them, the garden seemed to respond to the emotional intensity of the moment. Crystalline leaves shimmered with increased brilliance, and the air vibrated with a subtle harmonic resonance that Marcus had learned indicated strong emotional connections. He realized he was holding his breath, waiting for Leora's response, knowing that whatever she decided would change everything. "You're asking me to trust you," Leora said finally, her fingers tracing the edge of her chair's control panel. "To believe that your intentions are as pure as your words suggest. To risk everything, my position, my pride, my heart, on the chance that you're different from all the others." Marcus nodded, though he knew she couldn't see the gesture. "Yes. But I'm also willing to take that same risk. To face whatever consequences come our way, together." He paused, then added with quiet conviction, "Because I believe that's what real partnership is about, sharing the risks as well as the rewards." As they stood there, suspended between past prejudices and future possibilities, neither could have predicted how their decision would ripple through both their worlds, challenging long-held beliefs and forcing entire civilizations to confront their own biases. The proposal, still unspoken in formal terms, hung between them like a fragile thread connecting two galaxies, a thread that would soon become a bridge upon which countless others would have to cross, whether they were ready or not. The news of Captain Marcus Hale's intention to propose to Princess Leora spread through diplomatic channels like wildfire, igniting reactions that ranged from shock to outrage across multiple star systems. On Earth, the United Galactic Council convened an emergency session, with representatives from various nations voicing their concerns. Admiral Chen, head of Earth's diplomatic corps, slammed his fist on the conference table, declaring, "This isn't just a personal matter, it's a diplomatic disaster waiting to happen." His words echoed through the chamber, reflecting the sentiments of many who viewed the potential union as a threat to established interstellar relations. Meanwhile, on Xylophia 7, the royal court erupted into chaos. The High Chancellor, a stern figure with skin like molten silver, paced furiously in the war room. "Have you considered the implications?" he demanded of the royal family. "Our trade agreements with the Andromeda Consortium alone account for 40% of our annual revenue. They'll withdraw their support faster than you can blink." His assistants scrambled to project holographic graphs showing potential economic impacts, each scenario more dire than the last. The media frenzy reached unprecedented levels, with news outlets across the galaxy running continuous coverage. On the popular interstellar broadcast, Cosmic Connections, pundit Varn Terrell practically shouted at his co-host, "It's not just about economics or politics, it's about optics. How will it look to our allies when we align ourselves with... He struggled to find diplomatic wording, finally settling on, "with unconventional arrangements." The studio audience reacted with a mix of gasps and cheers, highlighting the deep divide in public opinion. Earth's scientific community weighed in with their own concerns. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a leading xenobiologist, published an urgent paper detailing the biological challenges of interspecies relationships. "We're talking about fundamental differences in cellular structure, reproductive compatibility, and basic survival requirements," she argued during a press conference. Behind her, holographic displays showed comparative anatomy charts that drew horrified gasps from the assembled journalists. In the diplomatic quarters of Xylophia 7, ambassadors from allied planets began packing their belongings. The representative from Vega Major submitted a formal protest, stating, "While we respect individual choices, we cannot ignore the potential security risks of such an unprecedented alliance." His assistant discreetly circulated memos suggesting that Marcus's actions might indicate deeper instability within Earth's diplomatic corps. The reaction from military circles proved equally intense. General Torvak of the Xylophian Defense Forces called an emergency meeting with his counterparts from allied systems. "We must consider the strategic implications," he warned, pacing before a star map that displayed potential conflict zones. "If Earth becomes too closely aligned with Xylophia 7 through this arrangement, it could upset the balance of power in this sector." His officers nodded gravely, already drafting contingency plans for various worst-case scenarios. Back on Earth, protests erupted outside major government buildings. Some groups supported Marcus's decision, carrying signs that read, "Love knows no boundaries," and equality across species. Others gathered with placards demanding his immediate recall, shouting about national security and diplomatic integrity. The division ran so deep that several countries threatened to withdraw from joint space exploration initiatives if the proposal proceeded. Even within Marcus's own diplomatic team, tensions ran high. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Patel, confronted him in private. "You're risking everything we've worked for," she argued, her voice shaking with emotion. "Every treaty, every alliance, they're all hanging by a thread because of this." She gestured toward the window, where protesters could be seen marching through the streets below. "Don't you see? This isn't just about you and the princess anymore." The situation escalated further when intelligence reports suggested that certain factions might attempt to sabotage the potential union. Security measures around both Marcus and Princess Leora increased dramatically, with agents from multiple agencies converging on Xylophia 7. The princess's personal guard tripled in size overnight, while Marcus found himself under constant surveillance by both protective details and suspicious operatives. Amidst this turmoil, smaller dramas played out across both worlds. On Earth, Marcus's family received threatening messages while simultaneously being inundated with supportive communications from unexpected quarters. A group of disabled rights activists organized a galaxy-wide campaign, using the situation to highlight discrimination against those with disabilities in interstellar relations. Meanwhile, on Xylophia 7, members of the royal household found themselves caught between loyalty to tradition and sympathy for the princess's happiness. The controversy reached such proportions that it began affecting unrelated diplomatic matters. Trade negotiations stalled as parties waited to see how the situation would resolve. Scientific collaborations were put on hold, with researchers citing current political instability as reason to delay joint projects. Even cultural exchange programs faced cancellations, as organizers worried about potential backlash from participating institutions. Through it all, Marcus and Princess Leora remained at the eye of the storm. Their daily interactions, once private moments of connection, now occurred under the watchful eyes of dozens of observers. Every conversation, every gesture carried the weight of galactic expectations. Yet despite the pressure, they continued to meet, their resolve strengthening with each passing day. In quiet moments away from prying eyes, they discussed not just their future but the broader implications of their decision, recognizing that their personal choice had become a catalyst for much larger discussions about acceptance, diversity, and the evolution of interstellar relationships. As the controversy surrounding their potential union intensified, Marcus and Princess Leora found themselves navigating increasingly dangerous waters. One evening, as they walked through the secluded northern gardens of the palace, Marcus suddenly grabbed Leora's hoverchair, pulling her into the shadow of a massive crystal tree. Moments later, a silent drone buzzed past their previous position, its sensors scanning the area with precision that spoke of military-grade technology. "Third one today," Marcus muttered, his hand still resting protectively on the chair's frame. "They're getting bolder." The assassination attempts began subtly at first, a malfunctioning environmental control system that nearly suffocated Leora during a state dinner, a supposedly secure transport vehicle that suddenly lost power while carrying Marcus through a mountain pass. Each incident was plausible enough to be dismissed as equipment failure, but both Marcus and Leora recognized the pattern emerging. Their security teams worked around the clock, analyzing data streams and monitoring communications, yet the perpetrators remained elusive, their motives obscured by layers of plausible deniability. The situation escalated dramatically during a diplomatic summit hosted by Xylophia 7. As Marcus prepared to deliver a speech supporting greater inclusivity in interstellar relations, a section of the conference floor suddenly destabilized. Quick-thinking guards managed to push both Marcus and Leora out of harm's way seconds before the platform collapsed into the levels below. The official explanation cited structural fatigue, but forensic analysis revealed microfractures consistent with deliberate sabotage. These threats transformed their daily lives into a complex dance of countermeasures and precautions. Meals were tested multiple times before consumption, communication devices were regularly swept for surveillance, and their movements became dictated by security protocols rather than personal preference. Yet despite these restrictions, their determination only grew stronger. In fact, the danger seemed to forge an even deeper bond between them, as each survived attempt reinforced their commitment to challenging the status quo. During one particularly tense evening, after narrowly avoiding an explosion at the Royal Opera House, Marcus and Leora found themselves alone in a secure chamber deep within the palace. "Do you ever wonder if we're pushing too hard?" Marcus asked, his voice unusually quiet. "If maybe we're trying to force something that shouldn't be?" Leora reached out, her hand finding his wrist with unerring accuracy. "I think about it every day," she admitted. "But then I remember something my grandmother used to say, true progress always feels like you're walking against the wind. Can you imagine what would happen if we gave up now? If we let fear dictate the course of history?" Her words sparked a revelation in Marcus. The next morning, he initiated a bold new strategy. Working with trusted allies from both Earth and Xylophia 7, they began documenting every threat, every act of discrimination, every attempt at intimidation. These records weren't just stored in official archives but distributed through secure channels to sympathetic parties across the galaxy. They transformed their struggle from a personal battle into a movement for change, using the very tactics of their opponents against them. The turning point came during a surprise attack on the Xylophian embassy on Earth. Masked figures breached the compound's defenses, targeting areas where Marcus was known to frequent. What they hadn't anticipated was the extensive network of supporters that had quietly formed around the couple. Within minutes, distress signals were broadcast across multiple channels, rallying not just official security forces but civilian volunteers who had been inspired by Marcus and Leora's stand against prejudice. As rescue teams converged on the embassy, something remarkable happened. Ordinary citizens, humans, Xylophians, and representatives from numerous other species began gathering outside the compound. They weren't content to merely observe, they actively participated in maintaining order, providing medical assistance, and documenting events. The attackers, expecting to operate in relative secrecy, found themselves facing not just professional security forces but a united front of beings who had decided that enough was enough. The aftermath of the embassy attack marked a significant shift in public perception. Footage of diverse species working together to protect the embassy went viral across the galaxy. News outlets that had previously condemned the Union now featured stories about the courage shown by ordinary beings standing up against violence and discrimination. Social media platforms lit up with hashtags supporting Marcus and Leora, while petitions calling for greater acceptance of interspecies relationships gained millions of signatures. Yet even as public support grew, the danger remained very real. Intelligence reports suggested that powerful interests were consolidating their opposition, forming shadowy alliances that crossed traditional boundaries of species and affiliation. Marcus and Leora found themselves at the center of a maelstrom that threatened to reshape interstellar relations forever. Their personal struggle had become a crucible in which the future of galactic cooperation would be forged, testing the limits of tolerance, understanding, and courage across countless worlds. The mounting pressures of their situation began manifesting in unexpected ways, testing Marcus and Leora's relationship in profound and sometimes painful ways. During a particularly grueling week of near misses and escalating threats, Marcus found himself snapping at Leora's attendance over minor scheduling conflicts. Later that evening, as they sat together in her private chambers, he broke down, confessing how the constant danger was eroding his patience and judgment. "I'm supposed to be protecting you," he admitted, his voice thick with frustration, "but I can't even keep my temper in check." Leora listened without interruption, her hands tracing the textured patterns on her chair's armrest, a nervous habit Marcus had come to recognize. When she finally spoke, her words cut through his self-recrimination with gentle precision. "You're trying to fight everyone else's battles while carrying your own," she observed. "But you forget, I'm not some fragile artifact that needs shielding. I've been fighting these battles my whole life." Her voice softened. "Maybe it's time we stopped trying to protect each other separately and started facing this together." This realization marked a shift in their approach to the crisis. They began implementing what they called empathy exercises, dedicated times where they would share their deepest fears and vulnerabilities without judgment or interruption. Marcus learned to articulate his terror of losing Leora not just to external threats but to the overwhelming pressure of their situation. In turn, Leora opened up about her fear that Marcus's devotion might be driven more by noble intentions than genuine affection, a concern she had kept hidden for months. Their bond deepened through these raw, honest exchanges, but the journey wasn't without its challenges. There were nights when exhaustion and stress led to heated arguments. Marcus frustrated by protocol restrictions that limited his ability to ensure Leora's safety, Leora feeling smothered by his constant vigilance. Yet each argument ended with them finding their way back to each other, often through small, intimate gestures that spoke louder than apologies. One such moment occurred during a particularly tense diplomatic reception. As Marcus navigated a gauntlet of hostile glances and whispered criticisms, he felt Leora's hoverchair glide up beside him. Without a word, she extended her hand, palm up. He placed his fingers in hers, feeling the familiar warmth and strength that always seemed to ground him. The simple contact communicated more than any speech could: solidarity, understanding, and unwavering support. Their shared experiences began transforming not just their personal relationship but their approach to leadership as well. They started hosting informal gatherings in the palace's crystal garden, inviting representatives from various species to engage in open dialogue about prejudice and acceptance. During these sessions, Marcus and Leora would share their own struggles, creating safe spaces for others to discuss their experiences with discrimination. The garden became known as the Chamber of Honest Light, a place where truth could be spoken without fear of repercussion. Through these interactions, they discovered unexpected allies among the diplomatic corps. Ambassador Leora of the aquatic world Nareda, who had initially opposed their union, revealed her own struggles with interspecies acceptance. "Your courage has given me permission to question my own biases," she confessed during one garden session. Similar revelations emerged from other unlikely quarters, creating a network of supporters who began advocating for more inclusive policies across multiple star systems. Yet the transformation wasn't limited to their diplomatic circles. Back on Earth, Marcus's example inspired a movement among young diplomats who began questioning traditional approaches to interstellar relations. They formed study groups examining historical cases of successful interspecies cooperation, drawing parallels to Marcus and Leora's situation. Meanwhile, on Xylophia 7, Leora's willingness to embrace vulnerability encouraged other members of the royal family to speak more openly about their own challenges and limitations. The couple's influence extended beyond policy discussions into cultural exchanges. Artists from various worlds began collaborating on projects celebrating diversity and acceptance. A particularly moving exhibition featured works created through telepresence technology, allowing artists with different physical abilities to contribute equally. The centerpiece of the exhibition was a collaborative piece by Marcus and Leora themselves, a kinetic sculpture that responded to both touch and emotional resonance, symbolizing their unique connection. As their relationship evolved, so did their understanding of what true partnership meant. They developed a system of nonverbal communication that combined Marcus's detailed descriptions of visual elements with Leora's acute empathic abilities. This synergy allowed them to navigate complex diplomatic situations with remarkable coordination, often anticipating each other's thoughts and reactions. Observers noted how their complementary strengths created a leadership dynamic that was greater than the sum of its parts. Their personal growth manifested in subtle but significant ways. Marcus learned to appreciate the beauty in vulnerability, recognizing how Leora's openness about her limitations fostered deeper connections with others. Leora, in turn, embraced Marcus's protective instincts not as signs of doubt in her capabilities but as expressions of love and commitment. Together, they created a new paradigm of strength that valued authenticity over perfection, connection over conformity. The challenges they faced continued to test their resolve, but each obstacle seemed to strengthen their bond rather than weaken it. Their relationship became a living testament to the power of genuine connection, inspiring others to look beyond surface differences and recognize the common humanity, or rather, common sentience that united all beings across the stars. As their story unfolded across the galaxy, Marcus and Princess Leora found themselves at the forefront of a movement that transcended personal romance or diplomatic alliance. Their relationship had become a catalyst for profound change, sparking discussions about acceptance, diversity, and the fundamental nature of connection between different species. The controversy surrounding their union had evolved from mere political disagreement into a galactic conversation about what it meant to truly embrace difference. In the corridors of power across countless worlds, policymakers found themselves grappling with uncomfortable truths. The resistance to Marcus and Leora's relationship exposed deep-seated prejudices that many had preferred to ignore. Space stations orbiting distant stars hosted impromptu debates about the ethics of interspecies partnerships, while academic institutions rushed to establish new departments dedicated to studying cross-cultural, or rather, cross-species, relationships. The very fabric of interstellar diplomacy began to shift, with traditional power structures forced to adapt to this new reality. The movement gained unexpected momentum when a coalition of grassroots organizations emerged, united under the banner of universal acceptance. These groups, composed of beings from diverse backgrounds and species, began organizing peaceful demonstrations outside diplomatic compounds and governmental buildings. Their message was simple yet revolutionary. Love and partnership should transcend artificial boundaries of species, ability, or tradition. The image of a blind Xylofian princess and a human diplomat standing together became their symbol, projected across public squares on planets separated by light years. Within the scientific community, the situation prompted a re-evaluation of long-held assumptions. Researchers from various fields collaborated on groundbreaking studies exploring the biological and social implications of interspecies relationships. Biologists worked alongside engineers to develop innovative solutions for compatibility challenges, while sociologists documented the cultural shifts occurring across different civilizations. The controversy had inadvertently created fertile ground for scientific advancement, with discoveries that promised to benefit all species involved. The entertainment industry responded with a wave of creative works inspired by Marcus and Leora's story. Holodramas, literature, and musical compositions explored themes of acceptance and understanding, reaching audiences across the galaxy. These artistic expressions served not just as entertainment but as tools for education and empathy building, helping beings from different worlds understand perspectives beyond their own. The princess's unique sensory experiences, interpreted through Marcus's detailed observations, inspired new forms of artistic expression that celebrated alternative ways of perceiving reality. Educational institutions incorporated these developments into their curricula, creating programs that emphasized diversity training and cross-cultural understanding. Young diplomats learned about the importance of looking beyond surface differences, while engineering students studied the innovations developed to facilitate interspecies cooperation. The movement sparked by Marcus and Leora's relationship had become a driving force for educational reform, preparing future generations to navigate an increasingly interconnected galaxy. Yet perhaps the most significant impact was felt in the realm of personal relationships. Across countless worlds, individuals found the courage to pursue connections that defied traditional boundaries. Stories emerged of partnerships that might never have formed without the precedents set by Marcus and Leora. These relationships, though small in scale compared to diplomatic treaties or scientific breakthroughs, represented the true measure of the movement's success, changing hearts and minds, one connection at a time. The controversy had also forced both Earth and Xylophia 7 to confront uncomfortable truths about their own societies. On Earth, the situation highlighted lingering prejudices against those with disabilities, prompting widespread reforms in accessibility and inclusion policies. Meanwhile, Xylophian culture underwent its own period of introspection, questioning long-standing traditions that had unintentionally perpetuated discrimination. The mirror held up by Marcus and Leora's relationship reflected not just their personal struggles but the collective challenges facing all civilized species. As the movement gained momentum, it began influencing sectors beyond politics and culture. Economic agreements were renegotiated to include clauses promoting diversity and inclusion. Corporate entities, once resistant to change, embraced new hiring practices and accessibility standards. The ripple effects of Marcus and Leora's decision extended into every facet of galactic society, proving that a single act of courage could indeed spark a revolution of understanding. Throughout this transformation, Marcus and Leora remained at the heart of the movement, their personal journey serving as both inspiration and anchor. They continued to face challenges, both external and internal, but their unwavering commitment to their cause inspired countless others to join the fight for a more inclusive future. Their story had become more than just a tale of forbidden love or political controversy. It had evolved into a beacon of hope for a galaxy struggling to redefine its values and priorities. The situation reached a critical juncture when an unprecedented crisis threatened the stability of the entire sector. A rogue asteroid field, displaced by gravitational anomalies, began disrupting shipping lanes and threatening populated systems across multiple star territories. The emergency required unprecedented cooperation between Earth, Xylophia 7, and their respective allies, a collaboration that many believed impossible given the ongoing controversy surrounding Marcus and Leora's relationship. Yet it was precisely their controversial position that positioned them uniquely to address the crisis. As evacuation orders rippled through endangered systems, Marcus and Leora found themselves at the center of frantic diplomatic negotiations. The asteroid field's trajectory threatened key installations from multiple species, including vital research stations and population centers. Traditional lines of command and control dissolved in the face of imminent disaster, leaving a power vacuum that only they could fill. Their controversial status had forced them to develop networks of unofficial communication and trust that now proved invaluable. Working from a hastily established command center aboard a neutral observation station, they implemented a strategy that would have been politically impossible weeks earlier. Drawing on the extensive documentation of threats they had compiled, they identified which factions had previously worked against their relationship and redirected those resources toward crisis management. Former adversaries found themselves cooperating with surprising efficiency, their mutual desire for survival overriding long-standing prejudices. The evacuation efforts revealed unexpected strengths in their controversial position. Marcus's detailed knowledge of Xylofian capabilities, gained through his relationship with Leora, allowed him to coordinate rescue operations with precision that astounded seasoned emergency responders. Meanwhile, Leora's empathic abilities proved crucial in managing panic and maintaining order among displaced populations. Her ability to sense emotional currents helped identify areas of greatest need and allocate resources accordingly. As the crisis deepened, Marcus and Leora made a bold decision that would redefine interstellar cooperation. They authorized the activation of experimental technology originally developed for their personal security, a quantum communication network that could instantaneously transmit information across vast distances. This technology, controversial due to privacy concerns, became the backbone of the evacuation effort, allowing real-time coordination between rescue teams operating in different star systems. The deployment of this network marked a turning point in the crisis response. Rescue vessels from Earth and Xylophia 7 worked in perfect synchronization, their movements choreographed through the quantum network. Medical facilities across multiple worlds prepared for incoming casualties based on predictive models generated by combining Xylofian empathic data with Earth statistical analysis. The fusion of different approaches created a response system more effective than anything previously attempted. However, the crisis also exposed new vulnerabilities. Hackers aligned with those who opposed Marcus and Leora's relationship attempted to disrupt the quantum network, exploiting weaknesses they had identified during earlier surveillance operations. The couple found themselves fighting not just to save lives but to preserve the very system that was keeping the evacuation effort functioning. Their intimate knowledge of both Earth's and Xylophia 7 security protocols proved crucial in defending against these attacks. The situation reached its peak when a major space station housing refugees from 3 different species began experiencing critical systems failures. With conventional rescue methods impossible due to the asteroid field's interference, Marcus and Leora authorized an unprecedented maneuver. Using a combination of Xylofian empathic navigation techniques and Earth's advanced propulsion technology, they coordinated a daring rescue operation that defied established safety protocols but saved thousands of lives. This success, broadcast live across the galaxy, fundamentally altered public perception of their controversial relationship. Beings who had previously opposed their union now witnessed firsthand how their unique partnership had facilitated cooperation between species and technologies that had never before worked together. The crisis had transformed their controversial status from a liability into an asset, demonstrating that the very qualities that made their relationship problematic were precisely those needed to address complex interstellar challenges. As the immediate danger passed and the asteroid field's trajectory was successfully altered, Marcus and Leora found themselves facing a new reality. The crisis had forced their worlds to work together in ways previously thought impossible, creating precedents for cooperation that would shape